as soon as we try to incorporate yoga, meditation into schools, rehabilitation centers, or for general well-being, there's an outrage in the country regarding saffronization of institutions, schools against the government. So, what are your thoughts on it? And should the government tone down this, or I think it's high time? Don't you think it's high time that we should proceed with mandating such well-being things for well-being?
Yes. Well, first of all, the debate is going on in the West too.
Yeah.
And some degree of yoga and meditation is being allowed, although there again is resistance to it. But certainly India should go forward with promoting these disciplines that promote positive health and well-being.
Yeah.
Meditation, there's many studies on meditation showing its value, on pranayama.
Yeah.
Natural healing is something that's growing in many forms throughout the world, Ayurveda. So these things, of course, should be taught, particularly in India. For example, the British closed down the Ayurvedic schools.
Yeah.
They also closed down many other schools. They also stopped the dancing and the art.
Yeah.
They tried to do this kind of cultural domination and subversion. So India needs to reclaim its heritage. India has minorities that may have different views, but the Indian civilization is an ancient dharmic civilization that needs to be preserved. And the Indian tradition is not one of this exclusivist religious belief. But it is one that believes that we need to explore the science of consciousness and share that with our children and have that as part of the education. And studies can also show that what are all these problems with children? Attention deficit. That's dealt with by meditation. So definitely it needs to be done.
So it should be mandated, I think.
It needs to be gradually brought into the schools. Because you have to create the institutions, the teachers, the curriculums, the textbooks. That's been started with the yoga. They created the yoga protocol. There are different levels of training they're introducing. But you just cannot create a mandate. You have to, on the ground, create the facilities to bring about these teachings. We need to train more yoga teachers. We need to get Ayurvedic teachers who really understand and apply authentic and traditional Ayurveda, but this is being done. This needs to be done more. It is certainly the way of the future. Yes.
And so one question I wanted to really ask you is about the status of women and the whole concept. When we there's lots of attack on Hindu society. With terming it as patriarchal, and we know that it's not really true. We all know it. There is we worship goddesses, but beyond saying that we worship goddesses, what is it that we need to do, and how do we explain this whole? Don't you think the gap is increasing? Like, I personally sometimes feel that though we worship goddesses, on the ground there is still a lot of gap, and how do we bridge it, and how do we raise those issues without sounding westernized? So this whole concept, how should it be explained to outsiders, and tell us about this.
Well, first of all, my wife Shambhavi, who is come from India, she's an exponent of all these things, and she can explain it to you quite well.
I was thinking that probably we could be meeting her today.
It may be if we're here.
Next time,
If we're here long enough, she may be coming back. But there's several things. First of all, in terms of context, they're attacking all the Western religions as patriarchal. Also. But strangely, some of the feminist groups that have been attacking Western religions as patriarchal are now defending burqas, which seems to be quite odd, because that is not freedom of choice. But in the Indian context, the first point we raised, you're absolutely right. India has the oldest and most diverse and expansive tradition of worship of the goddess or the Divine Mother. In Christianity, Mary is not the mother of the universe. She's the mother of Jesus. There's no Divine Mother. Islam doesn't have that. And basically, in the pagan traditions have that, but not explained in the same detail.
Yeah.
So India has that. It also has great women teachers. Anandamoy Ma, even Amaji, who's doing wonderful work, is there. Many Swaminis and yoginis are there, and festivals like level.
Yeah.
That does need to be addressed. And for that, both the men and the women have to address something.
Yes.
The men have to admit that they're not honoring the Devi at a practical level in their own families as they should.
Yes.
But the women also have to recognize that the way to empower women is not by westernization and following the feminine influences. Because a lot of what is called feminism is following basically masculine values.
Yeah.
Aggression, assertion. There is this honoring of Shakti in the Indian tradition. Shakti is the power born of Shanti. It is connected to nurture. It is connected to art, music, dance. There's a certain feminine beauty. See, that we follow modern political feminism. It's a very interesting story. There was one woman teacher. I'm trying to remember briefly what her name is, because I forget the name. But she came to America from India to teach, and she was brought to one of the American centers, and they asked her, "What do you think about women in America?" And she says, "I don't know. So far, all the women in America I've seen are men." So in other words, there has to be an embracing the feminine values also. So in the West, there's a big problem. Because now, with the lack of feminine values, the families are falling apart.
The charm of maintaining a family is fading away.
Or we say in America, is each man or woman for him or herself.
Yeah.
But yes, there is a need to understand the deeper Shakti tradition, but women do need to be empowered.
Yeah.
And you see, in the traditional society, you have limits because you had a pre-industrial society, so taking care of children.
There's no technology also.
Yeah. But you had women who were also in urban environments doing things, all of that. You had the women relative to the temples and learning. But in the modern world, it's different. The Dharma has to change. And there are many occupations where women excel. Many of the healing occupations, communication occupations.
Childcare, nurseries, and
but even intellectual fields, artistic fields, and so forth. So women have to be given that freedom, just as men now have more freedom today relative to jobs and other activities than they did in the centuries ago when they were limited to agriculture. And we can't necessarily blame these groups. For example, there were families and traditions where they were trained to be dancers. So they were trained from birth, and they had certain skills that people today aren't going to have very easily. So there's nothing wrong with maintaining those traditions at a certain level, but the freedom has to be
a balance.
And the men have to recognize that they are not honoring the Devi as much as they should. And I think the power to change Indian society, the Shakti is there. And then the other thing you have to remember is the government of India is also not supporting, and the governments of the West are not supporting education for Muslim girls. They are not getting, in the madrasas, they're not getting real education at all. No modern education. Not even the basics. So it's not just a question of empowering Hindu women. There should be proper education for all the women. And proper modern education for them. And the modern education doesn't mean a political education. It means being able to deal with computers and cell phones and communication and
stay relevant to the times.
And we need more women writers. We need a women's point of view brought out more women being brought out into the political arena. And here it's very strange that it is the Modi government, which is often denigrated as anti-women and right-wing.
Maximum women.
Not only has the maximum women, they're the ones that's supporting the rights for Muslim women. The so-called left is not supporting the rights of Muslim women. Mayawati, Mamata Banerjee, even the Communist Party will not support that, although the communists in Europe used to do that.
Absolutely.
And then even the other rights of women in terms of bringing them into things. It was Mulayam Singh who blocked the bills to allow to bring women into to the assemblies and all of that. That's something the whole modern world needs to address. But they also have to preserve the right role of women. For example, it's very good to have women in the workforce, but we shouldn't denigrate the woman's role for raising children.
Absolutely.
And men and women are not totally equal for raising children. Men cannot give birth to the children. So basically, the child is closer to the mother in its earlier years. So that should be honored, and that should be allowed. And honoring the woman's role in the home should also be.
I think because a woman cannot earn money, or probably she should not be denigrated for it in the beginning years of raising children life. And,
yes, definitely. But in America, for example, if the women can't raise their own children, then the cost of daycare and all these other things can be quite expensive. So it's not that they're not earning money. It's that they're saving money, or they're working in a role that's. There needs to be a balance there. A respect to the woman's role in the home, but the woman also has to be allowed to work in the outlet arena. And women's values, feminine values, and also honoring of Shakti and Devi has to be brought out. I mean, India is Bharat Mata, so that also has to be honored properly. Indian independence movement, it was mainly Vande Mataram, people like Shri Aurobindo who were followers of Devi or Shakti.
And so one more thing is, what should the Hindu society, people like us, the middle class, should do to preserve our culture? Like what, let's say, the key things that you think, you travel a lot in India and you see the families and people, different levels of different socio-economic classes. So what do you think is lacking? What should we do to preserve our culture and expand it? Through our children, maybe through our work. So please tell your thoughts.
We have to educate the children properly. They should know the fundamentals of Hindu Dharma before they go to school. So if the class introduces or doesn't teach it properly, they will know.
In schools, we are not. Currently, we are not being taught.
But you have to be taught. You have to be taught at home.
Is it okay?
By the Gurukulam.
A lot of people I meet, a lot of families, like a lot of mothers I meet, parents I meet. The people are hesitant to tell their children, that we are Hindu. They don't want to assert it on them. So I think.
That's apologetic.
So. Do you think we should be assertive to our 4 years, 5 years, 6-year-olds and try and tell about our culture, history? I mean, you think that's the right?
If who follows somebody who has an apologetic or defeatist attitude? Why would the children follow you if you're apologetic about who you are? In fact, you'll see that sometimes even people will follow very negative leaders who are passionate and assertive about what they follow. In fact, the Western religions are much inferior to Hinduism. They don't have the sadhana, the self-realization, the yoga, but they promote the belief very strongly. And that can be convincing for someone who has not been given an alternative point of view. So obviously you do. And you have to follow the Hindu way of life. You don't have to be overly pious. You don't have to be rigid. But you have to make it interesting. The festivals are interesting. The teachings can be interesting. The practices, yoga, dance,
the
rituals, music, can be done in a very beautiful way. It has to remain alive. And also, it's interesting to note, they also did this study in America, found that of the different religious groups, the Hindus have done the best job of maintaining their tradition and educating their children.
Because they're far from home, so they probably do it more earnestly.
And then you're taught to be apologetic because that it's afraid that it's offensive to minorities to say
true.
But then why shouldn't it be offensive for them? In other countries, it's offensive to the majority if the minority asserts itself. So you shouldn't be offended. No, it has to be a matter of truth. And then some people I've noticed have come to me and say, okay, we don't like the Hindu word. We're Vaishnavas. We follow this guru. And we follow Sanatana Dharma. We don't want to use the Hindu word. did I tell them? What do you tell Hindu children in America? They have certain religious choices, and there's no choice for Vaishnava, there's no choice for other things. Hindu is, it may not be the best possible word, but that is the word you're known by. That is the word the teachings are known by. If you go to a library, a bookstore, you won't find these books under Islam or under Sanatana Dharma or whatever else. You'll find it under Hinduism. Hindu Dharma. So we have to make that word meaningful for people and never be apologetic to your children. Was Vivekananda apologetic?
No.
Would anybody have followed him if he was apologetic?
Of course not.
You would have to be strong. And be honest. The fact is, I tell people certain basic facts of Hinduism. Hinduism is the oldest religion. It is the most diverse. It has the greatest range of spiritual and cultural teaching. It understands the science of consciousness. There's a group in America called Hinduism Today. And they produce a very nice magazine which you can get online. They have all kinds of resources on what Hindu Dharma is. And they have a nice resource where they just take all the religions of the world and list their basic views. What do they believe in? What do they practice? What do they do? And you can go down the line and see if they're the same. You see mainly that they're not the same.
They're not the same, Right. And so the last thing is, it's been now 2.5 years that Modi government has formed, which is perceived as at least a little pro-Hindu government by the masses. So what do you think are the main things, let's say 3 things, which the government should do, as a short-term or long-term, near future, to contain the cultural assault on Hindu society? What should be the key areas?
Well, first I want to put it in a broader perspective. Behind the cultural assault on Hindu society is a cultural and political assault on India. So when Modi took power, every institution in the country was bankrupt. There was no real economic plans. You saw all the scams. The armed forces were also not they were not honored properly. So he inherited a monumentally difficult situation. There was also a resistant bureaucracy, media, and academia to contend with. So first of all, they had to make sure the economy was sound. They had to make sure they had to have a strong military, but they also needed diplomatic support in the world. Previous Indian governments had not built a decent alliance with foreign countries, and India had very little prestige in it. That was also necessary for uplifting the country and giving it more strength economically, vision. So that has also been going on. And then the government has been bringing in various factors. You can see now they're also dealing with the courts, trying to and they're bringing the idea of a uniform civil code. They've also changed the number of the institutions in the country, whether it's the Indian Council of Historical Research or Philosophical Research or Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Education, and dealing with these issues. But you have to understand that besides the period of British or Islamic domination of India, the Congress followed, which dominated mostly since independence, also followed either an anti-Hindu view or a view that India would stay one if the Hindus would sacrifice their pride and interest for the sake of the minorities. The problem is, it's a bad psychology, because when you do a favor for someone and turn that into a right, then you can never take it back. So instead of creating national unity, this minority favoritism actually increases fragmentation. And it makes these people feel outside of the country or feel they need to assert themselves. So India is a strange country where, for the majority religion, Hinduism, to say I am a Hindu is regarded as almost subversive. Communal. Whereas terrorist, subversive, separatist organizations are not called. For example, some of these separatists in Kashmir, they weren't called separatists, or they weren't called communal. They were called militants, or even sometimes even freedom fighters. that is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
So I think the government is addressing that. But you see, we also have to address it in different institutions like the media and the academia. And changing the central government is very important, but it doesn't automatically bring changes in all levels. For example, a lot of educational issues are determined at a state level.
Yes, sir.
And even in the states, the control of Hindu temples is going on. The people at the central government do not support that, but those have to be changed at a state level. So what happened was there was a tremendous euphoria among Hindus when Modi was elected, but there was also some unrealistic expectations that if you change the man at the top, you change everything. For example, in America, the president cannot change the judiciary. The president does not make laws. Laws are made by the Congress, and states and other areas have certain laws. But there has been a parivartana, or a major change in India, and the direction has changed. And that is what is important to recognize. The direction has changed, and India will not go back to the old Nehruvian mentality. And there's a new generation in India coming up that has a stronger sense of national unity. They also travel and work around the country more. They're no longer such caught at a village level as belonging to one area.
I think technology is also helping there.
And other things in India, the bureaucracy was basically anti-Hindu. And many certain jobs in the government, you have to have a member who has come out of the bureaucracy. I'm not saying they're not good people in the bureaucracy, they are also there. But the majority has not been in favor. The government also reduced a lot of the corruption and made bribery and made certain people who haven't worked work. So instance has been there in implementing
the right
policies. And various institutions are already have different people running them. You can change the vision behind them, but things take time. So essentially, to make major cultural changes, you need at least another term. And more mass support has to be brought about. People, for example, the control of the temples is done at a state level. There needs to be agitation at a state level to deal with that. Certain work can be done at a national level as well. But we also have to raise the Hindu point of view and make sure the government remembers the Hindu background, because they receive so much criticism from the other side. Like you tend to respond to the one making
more criticism.
So I'm not saying you should make unconstructive criticism, but we have to maintain the forward vision. And the vision is not to make India Hindu in kind of an outer sense. The issue is to raise the Dharma and give Hindus equal rights. And to have Indian textbooks reflect the true history of India, which goes back, there was a time Hinduism, Buddhism, there was no Islam and Christianity there. So we can't pretend. And we have to honor, there's also, you see, India is a civilization. So what's happened is we need to honor the civilization of India, not simply teach what India is according to Western civilization. And so there needs to be, the educational systems of India have to bring back the Dharmic traditions, the model of Nalanda, Takshashila, honoring the meditation traditions, the yoga, because this is also the heritage here. It's not a question of another country.
So one last question. So there's a lot of hue and cry about, in recent months, about the issue of cow. The Indian cow and beef, the narrative around it. And a lot of us, a lot of people on the ground feel very, very sensitive about this issue. The villagers and people like that. So what is this, what are your thoughts about, should we sacrifice the devotion to cow and the protection of it for the sake of whatever narrative, and there's just too much of struggle on it? Or should we preserve it? Please tell us about this.
Well, first of all, we need to understand the greater issue. Beef eating is one of the main causes of pollution in the world. More water is used in America at slaughterhouses than in all the cities of America. So in America, progressive people don't eat beef, even on the left.
Yeah?
Yes, the people on the left will not promote eating of beef.
Okay.
Anti-ecology. It's only in India they do it as a matter of attacking one religion over
So
another.
it's not really a freedom of choice of eating, but it's more of the anti.
Let's go into it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that a reduction of beef eating is ecologically progressive. Vegetarianism is ecologically progressive.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong about saying that.
Yeah.
Honoring animals, honoring the cows is certainly a wonderful thing to do. The cow symbolizes Mother Earth, protection of the earth. That is there. And cow has always been a target of non-Hindu religions as a way of denigrating. Hindus say, instead of honoring cows, they say Hindus worship cows,
Yes.
which is totally incorrect. When you see Jesus as the good shepherd, you don't say Christians worship sheep. or that they follow a god of sheep. So that thing is there.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And then we have the issue of the cow vigilantism.
Yes.
And the issue of the Dalits. There has often been a discrimination against Dalits who have been involved in some way with beef or cows. And that is unfair. See, that is unfair. That is an occupation, that has been something that goes on.
But that just happened in Una, sir.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
but
it's not it was never a part of it.
I know.
Yeah.
But the point is the media can jump on those things.
Yes.
So the one thing in India, we have to understand there has been oppression of the Dalits. And that must be addressed.
Yes.
And the Vedas teach that we are all one Atma, one Purusha. That
I
has
agree
be
to
wrong.
this, sir.
But the cow issue is they're trying to manipulate it politically, and that's where it comes up at election times. And there's also this idea that the Hindus have brought up this issue, but they haven't.
They haven't. Okay.
And it's brought up by the opposite side as a definite political strategy.
Yes.
And as a planned political strategy. And the other issue that comes along with it is some of the Gau Rakshaks who cause violence are actually made up people that the opposition has planted to create a problem. And even some of the stories, there was that one journalist who recently admitted that he was being attacked.
Yes.
He made it up.
The producer in Mumbai.
The film executive from Mumbai.
So a lot of these stories have been exaggerated, or telling people, for example, you had one person at this Dadri who was supposedly killed for eating beef. That's objectionable, but it's not a massacre.
Yeah, it's not
Many people are killed for various reasons. And I'm not saying that this should be a reason, but it should be put into perspective that the fact is that there is a lot of violence against cows. And there's also violence against people who are protecting cows.
Absolutely.
There's actually more violence going on that side because there's a lot of vested money in the beef business.
Absolutely.
And I often wonder how much money from the beef business overseas is also coming into India to make India.
Our exports are very huge.
Not only very loose, India is the only place you go where you have the option of veg or non-veg. On flights, on other places. I mean, it's coming up a little more in the West, but it's still fairly
it's
rare.
restricted.
So the idea of protection of the cow of Mahatma Gandhi also favored that. It's an important part of the Dharma, but we don't favor cows over people. But at the same time, we recognize that there cannot be peace in humanity as long as we're mistreating our animals.
Especially the domestic, one of the most useful animals.
And the other problem that's happened in the Western world is the cow is now turned into a genetically engineered item. They stay in a stall, they're overweight, they're stuffed with antibiotics, they're killed at a young age.
The same with the chicken industry, sir.
The same as all the meat industry.
Too much of industrial farming of everything.
And that's extended even to the vegetable farming. How they've destroyed a lot of.
So do you think it's going overboard there?
Well, I think that this issue needs to be understood in the proper context, but don't give yourself into this beef issue as a single issue, or it's an issue of freedom of choice of food. No one's saying you cannot eat beef, but that beef should be regulated. And if some areas want to ban beef, that I think should also be accepted.
Yeah. So in several countries, I think like horse meat is banned in US and
Horse, dog, and other
yeah,
things.
Yeah.
So India has certain choices that it can also make, but it's become more of an emotional issues. You know, what I would say is that Hindus should all vote.
Yeah.
There's no point in getting upset about an issue and not voting.
Yes.
And they should vote on certain issues. They should vote as Hindus.
Yes, true.
You shouldn't just vote according to local issues, and particularly at national elections, you should vote as Hindus. Local elections, there may be local issues. But in the national election, I'm saying vote as Hindus not simply in a religious sense, but in the sense of the issues that are powerful for your community.
Yes.
Muslims vote as a community in America.
Absolutely.
Christians vote as communities in certain areas. Chinese vote as communities in various areas. So exercise your right to vote and create long-term policies and strategies.
Right.
But also there are certain problems within Hindu society that also can be addressed and improved. And proper education must be there. And don't expect the government to do everything. We also need more Hindu institutions, Hindu schools. I'm not saying and not only for educating children, but even outside of hours for educating people. The traditional Hindu temple always had education going on. Hindus need to understand their tradition, what they've practiced, what they follow, what their principles are, and need to dialogue and discuss and debate in the modern media context.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for speaking to us. Namaskar.